Defending a nation, Taiwan's military adds new weapons to its defense system. Shop, jab and a gift. Taiwan ramps up its efforts to get more people vaccinated. The fury of Mount Semeru. Rescuers in Indonesia battle through thick mud and smouldering debris in the scramble to find survivors. And defending democracy, why Lithuania isn't afraid of standing up to China or Russia. A warm welcome to TaiwanPlus News. I'm Yin Khvat. With a recent string of Chinese fighters entering Taiwan's air defense zone, Taiwan continues to bolster its defense capabilities on both land and sea. The latest additions of warships and new weapon systems takes place against a backdrop of increased Chinese aggression, and as regional allies raise concerns of a possible change in the status quo. Jaime Ocon reports.
Taiwan's military has announced it will roll back plans to build a 4,500-ton guided missile frigate, similar to that currently operated by the U.S. Navy. Research for the radar systems was not yet completed. So the military is now looking to build smaller 2,000-ton warships while it seeks other proposals to bolster its naval combat capabilities. Taiwan is also looking to install locally produced 105mm assault guns onto its Clouded Leopard armored vehicles next month. Another sign of just how serious Taiwan is taking its defense preparations. After recent Chinese incursions into Taiwan's air defense zone, allies like the U.S. are expressing concern.
We're clear-eyed about the challenge that China presents, but China's not 10 feet tall. We remain steadfast to our One China policy and our commitments under the Taiwan Relations Act to support Taiwan's ability to defend itself while also maintaining our capacity to resist any resort to force that would jeopardize the security of the people of Taiwan. Now, we're working to bolster deterrence and not seeking to change the status quo.
But China might not share the same view. Earlier this week, Chinese state media reported that Chinese military were conducting island bombing drills in the South China Sea, using live rounds and deploying sea mines to demonstrate their capabilities.
中方维护自身主权和领土完整的决心坚如磐石。中国实现统一的历史大势不可阻挡。
It's that determination that has other countries in the region worried about China's next move. Kama Xu and Jaime Ocon for TaiwanPlus.
Fears about the transmissibility of the latest COVID-19 variant Omicron are causing countries to review their lagging rates of vaccination. In Taiwan, more than half of the population is fully vaccinated. And as Sandy Chi reports, the government is seeking new ways to boost its vaccine coverage.
Shop, jab and gift. A new combination. Over the weekend, Carrefour stores in Taiwan began offering Moderna COVID-19 vaccines for free without need for an appointment. This follows a recent announcement by the Central Epidemic Command Center to establish vaccination sites across supermarkets and retail stores. To date, around 78% of the population in Taiwan have received a first dose of the COVID-19 vaccine, while almost 60% are fully vaccinated. But the Taiwanese government wants to increase those numbers. Even more, those who are vaccinated in this Carrefour branch will each receive a free $180 voucher and a lunchbox. Meanwhile, Taiwanese supermarket chain PX Mart expects to provide vaccination services starting next week in some 145 store locations. Those vaccinated at those stores will also receive a free gift. Short of mandating vaccines, the Taiwanese government has announced that essential workers in certain government-regulated industries will need proof of a second COVID-19 vaccine dose administered.
明年1月1号开始实施，所以请相关人员尽速于今年的12月17号以前完整接种2剂的疫苗。
Those employed by or working in institutions under the jurisdiction of the Ministry of Education, Ministry of Economic Affairs, Ministry of Health and Welfare, and the Ministry of Labor will be covered by the new regulations. Anyone medically unfit for vaccination will need to provide negative test results on a weekly basis. Taiwan will also start administering second doses of Pfizer-BioNTech COVID-19 vaccine on school campuses for students by December 20th. The Pfizer-BioNTech vaccine is the only brand offered to the 12 to 17 age group in Taiwan, with the rollout of first doses in September. With easier access, the government hopes more people get vaccinated to gear up and fight against the pandemic. James Raynor and Sandy Chi for TaiwanPlus.
Strict lockdowns, mandatory vaccinations and COVID passes are some of the measures being taken by European countries as the threat of the new Omicron COVID variant looms. But in many cities, protesters have taken to the streets against the latest restrictions. Bing Wang has more.
Clashes in Belgium as police fired tear gas and water cannons to disperse crowds pelting officers with stones and fireworks. Demonstrators in Brussels waved banners with slogans like "No to mandatory vaccination" and "No to dictatorship." After almost 2 years of on and off lockdowns, the protesters are demanding a reopening of their country and saying no to vaccine mandates.
I want to choose over my own body and my own free will, and that's why I'm here.
Quel qu'il soit, je supporte pas la discrimination. Ici, évidemment, il y a le Covid Safety Ticket qui est discriminatoire. Il y a donc les sanctions par rapport aux soignants qui sont discriminatoires. Hein, il y a la PICUS, là, donc le vaccin obligatoire qui va nous tomber dans la gueule, et tout ça, et ainsi de suite. Tout ça, c'est discriminatoire. Donc c'était ainsi, il faut se battre pour ça. La dictature, donc c'était, on n'en veut pas. Voilà.
The protests come as the country introduces strict measures to ward off another wave of COVID infections from the Omicron variant. But with new infections up by 27% over the past week, the Belgian Prime Minister said he has no choice.
Eerste vaststelling is dat de alarmsignalen op rood staan. We zien dat we bijzonder veel besmettingen hebben in ons land. We zien ook dat het aantal bedden die bezet is in intensieve zorgen verdubbeld is op een week tijd en dat we de rode lijn.
The threat posed by Omicron has prompted several Western countries, particularly in Europe, to tighten their lockdown measures, especially targeting people who remain unvaccinated.
Daher haben wir heute beschlossen, dass ab morgen, Montag 0 Uhr, in Österreich ein Lockdown für Ungeimpfte gilt.
The introduction of COVID passes to enter public spaces has met with a negative response in several countries. There have been protests in Spain, the Netherlands, Austria, and Germany.
Wenn man dann merkt, okay, es folgt keiner Systematik, dann fühle ich mich ja viel ausgelieferter. Wenn dazu noch kommt, was ja jetzt viele so erleben, da würde ich sagen,
Italy is also prepared to adopt restrictions against unvaccinated people. But here, where COVID first brought its devastation to Europe, more people seem to welcome the decision.
In questo momento che vediamo una ripresa del contagio, cioè una quarta ondata, e io per esperienza so cosa abbiamo sofferto noi della sanità pubblica e cosa hanno sofferto le persone, i cittadini. Io penso che qualsiasi misura sia necessaria e sia utile.
Researchers and scientists are still working around the clock to assess the true danger of the new Omicron variant. But governments know by now they must respond quickly to quell another wave of outbreaks. While new measures may be unpopular, leaders believe them to be the best course of action. Bill Kong and Bing Wang for TaiwanPlus.
Myanmar's ousted leader Aung San Suu Kyi was sentenced to 4 years in jail on Monday. The 76-year-old was found guilty on charges brought by the military of inciting dissent and breaking COVID rules under a natural disasters law. Suu Kyi has been under house arrest since February, when the junta seized power in a coup alleging voting fraud in the November 2020 elections, which Suu Kyi's party won by a landslide. The democracy icon faces a total of 11 charges, all of which she denies. 5 people were killed and dozens injured in Myanmar on Sunday when security forces rammed a vehicle into protesters. Footage shared on social media and verified by TaiwanPlus shows the vehicle speeding towards a small crowd in the country's largest city, Yangon. Flash mob-style protests continue in Myanmar despite the killing of more than 1,300 demonstrators and activists since the military coup in February. Last week, reporter Rick Lout spoke to Asia researcher for Human Rights Watch, Manny Mang, about how opposition to the military has changed.
It's very different to these weeks and months in early February and March where there were, millions out on the streets every day. Certainly, the protesters are out on the streets still, although not as in large numbers. But my understanding is that there are these, flash mob style protests happening every day all around the country. I think what's happened now, though, is a bit of a waiting game for people where they're doing as much as they can to continue to be vocal against the junta and the military takeover. But they're also waiting for action from the international community. And this means that, the targeted sanctions that have been imposed by just a handful of countries are not enough.
Thai authorities say they've seized almost 900 kilograms of crystal methamphetamine bound for Taiwan, with an estimated street value of up to $88 million. The drugs were found in a shipment of 161 silicon slabs following a tip-off. Officials said the source of the packages was not yet known. Authorities in Thailand and Taiwan are now working together to investigate the case. Rescuers in Indonesia are battling through hot ash and debris in the hope of finding more survivors after a volcano erupted on Saturday, killing at least 14 people and leaving dozens with burns. The eruption of Mount Semeru on the island of Java covered homes with molten ash. Louise Watt reports.
Villages were blanketed in mud and ash when Mount Semeru erupted, causing thousands of people to flee in panic.
Terus tidak sampai 10 menit, Pak, saya lari itu. Saya dengar kabar rumah saya itu sudah tertimbun lava, Pak, tinggal genteng. Tinggal atapnya tok yang kelihatan. Terus ternak-ternak saya itu sekitar 15 ekor, Pak, tertimbun lava juga. Jadi saya merasa bersyukur walaupun tidak bawa apa-apa, tapi saya sama anak istri bisa selamat, masih bisa melarikan diri. Soalnya lavanya datangnya tiba-tiba, Pak.
Hundreds of families have been forced into makeshift shelters in mosques, schools, and village halls. Rescuers are still looking for survivors, but efforts have been hampered by a collapsed bridge, as well as hot ash and debris. The more than 3,600-meter Semeru last erupted in January, with no casualties.
Ya, semua agak takut, Mas. Agak takut semua berlarian. Dikira letusan seperti hari-hari biasa, ternyata lebih parah daripada yang tahun kemarin.
On Sunday, some residents went against official warnings and braved the sea of mud and filthy air to return to their homes, desperate to salvage what they could. The situation remains dangerous, and expected rain could further hinder rescue efforts. Damon Lin and Louise Watt for TaiwanPlus.
Coming up after the break, we take you to meet the young team helping to make Taiwanese cities more bat-friendly. Stay with us.
最有人情味的地方。
Welcome back. You're watching TaiwanPlus News. A reminder of our top story. With a recent string of Chinese fighters entering Taiwan's air defense zone, Taiwan continues to bolster its defense capabilities on both land and sea. The latest additions of both warships and new weapon systems takes place against a backdrop of increased Chinese aggression. A 43-member delegation from Slovakia has arrived in Taiwan. It's the highest-level visit since the country opened its representative office in Taipei in 2003. And it's the sixth visiting delegation since Beijing flew 150 planes into Taiwan's air defense zone starting on October 1st. The delegation is led by Slovakia's Deputy Economic Minister Karol Galek. It will co-host the first Taiwan-Slovakia cross-ministerial meeting on economics, covering two-way investment, education, culture and tourism. The six-day trip comes after Taiwan led its own trade delegation to the European nation in October, and as a group of parliamentarians from Baltic states finish their visit to Taiwan. A number of European nations have developed warmer ties with Taiwan in recent months. And those nations are developing ties with Taiwan in the face of increasing reprisals from Beijing. The Baltic delegation's recent visit has reportedly resulted in the removal of Lithuania from China's customs registry, leaving tons of goods stranding at sea. I sat down with Lithuania MP Dovilė Tsakelina, who was one of 10 European Union MEPs and public figures blacklisted by Beijing over their call for sanctions against China's human rights abuses in the Xinjiang region. She told me how important it was for democracies not to be bystanders and instead to defend every inch of democracy.
EU is quite unified on saying that they support Lithuania's relationship with Taiwan. It does not violate any treaties, neither bilateral nor international treaties. And what is important in this sense is that we are understanding more and more that it's not a situation where we can give in to the bully, because that never helps. Just like in an individual psychology, the same as in international relations. If you give in to the bully, he's going to press further.
What do you think friends of Taiwan can do to deter China short of sending in troops?
So what happens is, if a bully is attacking a victim and everyone else are just quiet bystanders, then the bully can go as far as he wants. But if others are not the bystanders but support the victim, don't allow the attack, name and shame, explain why this is wrong, suggest different methods of behavior. It's when we're talking about kids. But when we're talking about international relations, if we are unified and if we form a very clear Western Indo-Pacific ring of democratic countries, we sort of surround in democracies, in democratic ring, People's Republic of China, so then we are saying a firm stop to spread of hostility.
When we last spoke, you spoke about China showing its true colours as a global aggressor rather than a global power. Has this been on display whilst you have been in Taiwan?
Sending fighter jets into the skies over Taiwan during our visit kind of shows that probably they don't understand how democracy works, and that threats and intimidation is not a way to establish your reputation as a global power, because global powers are based on rules of law and of keeping to international standards. But if you are an aggressor, you have low self-esteem, you are not sure of yourself, you have to beat up everybody else around you, because that's the only way you can rise up your self-esteem.
Taiwan and Lithuania have some shared similarities in their histories. How much do you see of the reflection between our histories?
I'd say that's pretty similar, because Lithuania has been occupied, has been annexed by Soviet Union, which was also a repressive, authoritarian communist organization. And now you are facing threats from a very similar communist organization, China Communist Party. So, of course, this, rings a bell inside us, because 1 in 5 families in Lithuania has suffered directly from the Soviet regime, including my own family. So that, is really painful memory. And my family members that are still alive will never forget this. So we really don't want to see other people to suffer the same. I mean, small countries next to authoritarian regimes face the same threats, be it the 20th century or 21st century, and that means that the lessons that we have learned may be useful to our friends.
Lithuania has been fighting Russia for decades, much longer.
Yeah.
And now Lithuania appears to have taken on China. These are 2 great authoritarian powers. Is this too much for Lithuania?
We haven't taken on anything. We just wish for stability and security, not only regionally but globally. And as you have also identified, that there is bigger and bigger connection between Russia and China, People's Republic of China. That means that if aggressors unite and we, the democratic states, just stay dispersed, that means that we are unsafe. And we all understand what it means if the Taiwan Strait is being annexed by People's Republic of China, what happens in the military, in the global security sense. So what countries would be next in line? If we want to maintain stability globally, we just need to defend every inch of democracy, try to do it as rationally and as consistently.
A group of activists against nuclear power have completed a 30-hour march from Gongliao on Taiwan's northeast coast to the capital, Taipei. Supporters joined the group as they reached their destination in front of the presidential office building. The activists want the public to reject the idea of restarting work on the mothballed 4th nuclear power plant in Gongliao. The question will be put to a national referendum on December 18th. In Taiwan, Taiwanese fruit bats are endemic and extinct, but they are forced to live in flood control channels as they have been forced out of their homes, fleeing urbanization and climate change. Now more and more efforts are underway to make Taiwanese cities more bat-friendly.
不是所有的蝙蝠都住在洞穴里，有些种类很需要树。
其实蝙蝠倒立，它需要往下坠的过程中去飞行，就像大家看到蝙蝠飞出来一样，它有点下坠再起飞。那在那种高度对他们来讲，其实起飞会变得非常非常的方便。
白天是蝙蝠的休息时间，躲在树上的高头蝠可忙着呢。
他们每一年的4月中就开始到这边来了，那大概5月就集结就差不多之后，6月份它就生 baby 了。那这时候就看到很多的 baby 会在妈妈的旁边，然后吃母奶什么的。
藏人那边把树捐出来，那让这些蝙蝠就有更广阔的栖地。
2018年移过来的蒲葵树，在居民细心的照料下站稳了脚步。台湾胡蝠是台湾体型最大的蝙蝠，以果实为生，帮助许多植物授粉，维系森林健康。因为大环境改变，数量已经骤减，成为1级保育类动物。 对于极度濒危的胡蝠，小朋友也想伸出援手。
很多的洞穴在台湾其实都会被当成观光旅游，然后这样的冲击在蝙蝠栖所越来越少。那反而是在这种下水道地方，虽然可能人不太下去，几乎进不去，反而成为蝙蝠一个很好的一个栖息地方。
那我们也有试着想过说，有没有可能打造一些比较适合蝙蝠可以在栖息的一些环境，可是又要兼顾我们防洪的一个可能。
当人们造成野生动物的栖地减少，在能力范围内体贴一点，多做一点。尽管力量微薄，只要开始改变，野生动物活下去的机会就能多一些。
Thanks for watching TaiwanPlus News. I'm Yin Khvat. We leave you with footage of Santas taking to the slopes, skiing and snowboarding. For more stories from Taiwan and around the world, please download the TaiwanPlus app. Stay safe and see you next time.